Sure, the 2023 fantasy football season just ended. That doesn't mean we don't have work to do here. Of course, we got to begin our preparation for the 2024 fantasy football season. And of course, it's going to come upon us faster. The big board comes out in about a month, I would assume. So we have to start the prep work now. And that begins with the rookie QBs. Of course, my alum school, USC, Caleb Williams, a guy that I loved a lot coming into this year, only for the warts to really show, both with him, maybe as a person, maybe as a player as well. A lot to talk about here. And of course, the big question to ask: who's going to be this year's Anthony Richardson for me? Who's going to be this year's CJ Stroud? Two guys that stood out last year amongst the QBs. Let's talk about it. And if you are new to this process, if you didn't watch last year, this is not going to be a sexy video. It's not going to be one where there's a lot of flashy graphics and all that. What this is really about is using data for Sports Info Solutions for the college football players from the last 2 years to find out who are the guys that we actually can trust in the NFL, who's going to add value to the team that they go to, and who's going to be in a spot as well, where obviously the landing spot's a very important one. But there are guys too, like the Texans, you were going to that spot last for CJ Stroud. You don't go at Nico Collins and go, man, what a great weapon I'm getting here. Robert Woods off the scrap heap. Wow, this is going to be great. Tank Dell in the 5th round, 6th round. What a great player to have as part of it. It wasn't necessarily what the outlay would have been. So I think the talent drives the landing spot as much as anything. Obviously, coaching going to be an important part, thing that we'll talk about as we get to the offseason more. But this is what it looks like here. So shout out to the chat. Appreciate all you guys who are watching live. Of course, you've watched after the fact as well. Please hit that like button, because I don't think we're going to be getting I don't think we're going to be getting as many views as we normally do for, let's say, a showdown video or a best ball playoff video. But shout out to the chat. It's rookie season indeed. Let's ready to move on to 2024 draft season. GMs, and Tyler's got just enough sexy for the stream. So that's all we can ever ask for here. Let's talk about it here, and let's start with Caleb Williams. And I'm actually, one thing before we get into this, and I don't want to delay it here because people are going to watch after the fact and go, why is this guy not talking about the rookies? Shout out to our guy, Fareed Shaheed, who I watched a little bit on Liam's stream yesterday. He did come to the table and admit that he watched the Splash Blade. In fact, I watched the infamous Jerry DraftKings episode that, of course, where a guy in the chat or a guy in the was really advocating for Dalvin Cook, and that did not work out well. So that was a deep cut that Fareed knew. So shout out to him. It was very nice to see him giving me an mention on Twitter. And shout out to, again, $3 million winners. Could be you next year, right? If Fareed's watching Jerry and me yelling at a man on a stream, could be any of us. All right, so let's look at the numbers here. We're going to start with the 2024 numbers. I do have the numbers from last year as well. And as a frame of reference, I also have the numbers from guys last year. And let's just look at some of the things that maybe I got wrong, some of the things that maybe could have stood out a little bit more. And honestly, maybe we should start with that, where one thing I remember talking at great length about CJ Stroud, of course, I did rewatch some of the videos as well to kind of make sure that my takes were aligned with what I felt like they were. CJ Stroud, the biggest thing that he did was he added value at every level as a passer, where we're talking throws of under 10 air yards, 0.08 EPA, throws of 10 to 20 air yards, a 0.44 EPA, throws of over 20 air yards, a 0.93 EPA. That's sort of the main thing I'm looking at in terms of a pure passer, what a QB can do to add value to the stack. And CJ Stroud was a guy where I think, even honestly dating back to that January video, I had said CJ Stroud's the kind of guy that can add value to his players, just because of the fact you do see these EPA metrics, the expected points added metrics from Sports Info Solutions. They reflect basically how much above average a player is contributing to his team. And for CJ Stroud, if he's creating value for his players, and it's also not in yak, he's only had 6 yards after the catch last year. He's basically putting the ball in advantageous spots for these guys to get down the field. And it's not a thing like where Trevor Lawrence came out of college. He was getting the ball into spots as well, but guys can then run after it. They had high yak numbers because of the fact that he's putting the ball as kind of part of a system instead. And Trevor Lawrence has worked out fine as a pro, but I think you can make the case that a lot of his success has come because the systems he's been in, not necessarily his own talent, as I think we kind of saw from the Urban Meyer year. That's sort of a difference point for me, where for a Stroud, if a guy is going to be able to add value at every level, if a guy's going to come in and not be dependent upon yak receivers, those are the guys that really can add the most value. The other part of it's going to be guys who run a lot. And Anthony Richardson, of course, we talked about last year. You can see on the screen here, Anthony Richardson had a 38% avoided tackle rate when running the ball. Ran the ball 8.3 times as well, so pretty good volume in terms of the rushing metrics he had at Florida. But the avoided tackle rate was the part that stood out to me. In addition to just being a plus EPA rusher at a plus 0.18 EPA here that you can see on the screen. But the point being is you have kind of to identify these skills these guys have. So for Anthony Richardson, the main thing I thought was that he's going to run maybe 10 times a game. He's going to add value doing that. And he also wants to get ball downfield, where he was throwing the ball downfield at a 15% rate, which is one of the highest marks in the class besides a Hendon Hooker, who was playing in a gimmicky Tennessee offense. So that's sort of the frame of reference for last year. And then for Bryce Young, if we were going to poke holes in him, the fact that he was playing at Bama, obviously a very consistent offense, we know. Where could we have maybe read a little bit more into Bryce Young not being good? I was okay with him as a player because he was going to go number one. But I think I had seen some flaws in his numbers. And really the main things that jumped out to me, not an aggressive downfield thrower. And I think that is a big part. What I talk about a lot with QBs, the thing that stood out to me was Josh Allen when he was first entering the pros, and nobody was in on him that first year he was on the Bills and had the injury, and I was touting him on Stochastic streams back in the day, and people were legit laughing at me for it. He threw a lot of deep balls. He ran a lot of times. Those are the two biggest things you can do to add value as a fantasy player, whether it be in college, whether it be as a pro. Those are tendencies that do start to add value to what you're trying to do overall. But when you don't throw deep, you also don't run a lot, and you're also very small. And there's a lot of things for Bryce Young that we could have pointed at where if he lands in the right system, I think he could be like Bryce Young at Bama. If he lands in the wrong system like he did this year, then you're looking at a guy who's not going to have the inherent traits to make him bubble up to add more value as a player. So I think that's what we could have taken away from Bryce Young and maybe dialed in on him more. I still think the draft capital matters the most for these players, obviously, but in terms of the numbers, like Bryce Young had some flaws in the numbers that I think I probably didn't highlight enough last year. But let's get into it for this year. Caleb Williams, let's start out where I looked at these numbers. And again, I did a little more pre-advanced prep, so I'm not just coming in fully blind and going to be wowed by everybody. And I think with Caleb Williams, one thing that jumped out, he really wasn't on target very much. 67% on target rate for him. Not very good, especially given the fact that the previous year he had let me try to keep these aligned so I can just jump back and forth. Last year at a 72% on target rate. So we're looking at a guy who's regressing a little bit here. The catchable ball rate was still pretty close, 79.3% catchable ball rate compared to 79.6% the previous year. So Caleb Williams, I think, did regress a little bit this year. The biggest part of the regression, though, is going to be under pressure, where he had a 31% pressure rate last year, a 31% pressure rate this year, but a negative 0.7 EPA under pressure this year compared to a negative 0.03. So last year, you might remember, he had a lot of highlight reel plays, moving around the pocket, making some things work. This year, you kind of saw that a little bit less. And I think that's something where the eye test, certainly as I was watching the games throughout the course of the year, of course, watched a lot of USC games because that's my school. And I thought we had a shot to make the playoff. And boy, was I wrong. But point being, like Caleb Williams, I think had a lot more magic under pressure last year than he's had so far this year. And I think that's something where, the pressure rate holding the same, you could certainly blame the offensive line. You could also blame as well the fact that he clearly seemed a little bit distracted by the off-field stuff this year. A 7.9% sack rate compared to 5.3%. That could just be variance, but I think we saw enough regression from Caleb Williams this year that I'd be a little bit worried about just the pure talent level where can he go somewhere and be CJ Stroud? I think he can, but I think if he lands in a bad situation, I don't know that he's Bryce Young, but I think that there are some worrying things looking at the numbers here. Bears have a tough decision to make with the number one pick. I mean, look, it's hard to pay for that contract for Justin Fields where he's probably looking $40 to $60 million a year is what you would be looking at. Because I think even Jordan Love expected if he does extend for the Packers, going to be about $40 million is what the cost is going to be based on some of the cap people I've seen talking on social media. So in that respect, yes, like I would probably trade Fields and go to Caleb Williams, go to Drake Maye, go to maybe even Jayden Daniels, who might be this year's AR for me. Point being, though, I think that for a team like Chicago, I don't trust that they would be able to do what you need Caleb Williams to do. The best hope you would have for that would be that they treat Caleb Williams like when they really trust Justin Fields, let him throw the ball 40 times a game, dropping back 40 plus times a game. Like that's where you'd want them to treat Caleb Williams. And I don't think the Bears would do that. So for me personally, I would rather see the Bears keep Justin Fields and trade out of that spot. Because I just don't want Caleb Williams to go to a cold weather city. I think he's also liked some tweets saying that I think Matt Leinart said that he didn't want the Bears to take Caleb Williams because he thought that they should keep Justin Fields. And Caleb Williams liked that tweet. Doesn't seem like he wants to go to Chicago. Point being, I guess for me is like, I think Caleb Williams is a guy that I would have thought coming into this year, I would have thought that he can go anywhere and add value right away. And the way his numbers look, I don't know that he necessarily will do that unless he lands in the right spot. Bears owners 100. I think they try to make it work with Fields and build around him. Rebuild likely won't be seen by the old lady. That's certainly fair. I don't know that that's the decision an owner would make necessarily, but older people, certainly, older GMs as well, older coaches do tend to want to err on the side of just avoiding a full tear down rebuild. And I guess I get, honestly, Chicago's got enough weapons that it sort of doesn't make sense where you traded for DJ Moore last year. You added some more weapons. You added the Montez Sweats of the world, probably paid a little bit too much for him this past trade deadline. I don't think of Caleb Williams, even though he's probably the most pro-ready QB. I don't think he's the move for them. So I would personally be a little bit surprised if the Bears get Caleb Williams, but I think they're going to go Justin Fields as well. Other things to note for Caleb Williams. So things that are good about him, because we've kind of talked about the bad. So he is still a plus EPA thrower at every level, which is kind of the main thing you look at for a QB. Are they adding value no matter where they're targeting on the field? I think that's a big part of it. One downside, he was relying a little bit on yak. Again, that could be a skill point of him. Throwing guys into yards after catch is a skill, but sometimes it can be a schematic thing where guys just get into space because of how good the coaches are rather, and how well they get guys into space in terms of the scheme. So I would say the jury's out on that one. Last year, he was at 7.6 yak. So actually did a better job last year, whether it be the scheme or him himself. So for Caleb Williams, I think he is still a positive passer, but it's just not as blow away good as it was last year, where he probably would have been the best throwing prospect in the draft last year. This year, I think he's regressed enough that it honestly wouldn't shock me to see him not be the number one pick, would be the first thing I would say, just because of all the bad kind of juju around him and all of that. But that said, like, he's got enough weapons here where, again, if he lands on the right spot, I think he's a guy that probably not going to go in the top 6 rounds or anything. But if he goes where AR went last year, goes top 100, I think that's probably about right for him if he is on a good team with some weapons around him. Resetting with rookie QB contract and getting whoever they can for Fields makes all the sense in the world, IMO. But not if you have vets around him. Like, not if you have Cole Kmet, not if you just paid a lot of money to, not if you have DJ Moore, who's got a pretty big contract, not if you have defensive guys you're trying to add in, who are also going to be do big extensions. So I think that the team, if I were to read the tea leaves on what the team is doing, I think that the Bears probably keep Fields, but we will see. So one thing that also stands out for Caleb Williams, really high avoided tackle rate. So we talked about Anthony Richardson last year. His 38% avoided tackle rate was higher than actually every running back in the class. It was Bijan Robinson and it was Bijan and Roshan who were tied at a 33% avoided tackle rate amidst the running backs. Obviously, like, it's a smaller sample size because Caleb Williams is running 5.3 times per game, but a 38% avoided tackle rate, 17% touchdown per rush rate, 0.32 EPA as well on run plays. A pretty good number here for Caleb Williams. So I think that, my tendency, especially as a USC fan, is to kind of shit on Caleb Williams here. You see the numbers are not as good as they were in 2022. That's definitely something with Caleb Williams that you can critique him for. But I think on paper, he still has everything you look for in a fantasy QB. Would definitely be nice if he ran a little bit more, but this is also, a year where he's heading into the NFL draft, and I think he probably wanted to run a little bit less. Ran 5.3 times this past year, 7.7 the year before. And you actually see the same thing for Drake Maye as well, where Drake Maye ran 13.1 times last year, down to 6.8 this year. So maybe a bit of a business decision for Caleb Williams and Drake Maye to run less this year. Could also be the coaches maybe not want to put them in jeopardy that much because of how important both guys were to both teams. But I think for Caleb Williams, the raw stuff is still here. The red zone efficiency is pretty good. I don't think this really correlates a huge amount with pro success, but the ability to get touchdowns, to create production in tight windows in the red zone when defenses are the most constricted, I think is a positive thing as well. So again, my tendency is to want to shit on Caleb Williams, and I think you probably heard that with the first parts of this diatribe. But I think for Caleb Williams, he's still a really strong prospect, still a really strong player, and I think maybe not my favorite QB in the class, but I think as long as he lands somewhere where we're not going to an aggressive offense, if he's not going to a New England offense that somehow brings back Belichick and Bill O'Brien, I think Caleb Williams is going to be in a very strong spot for himself. So I feel good about that. Add Harrison and some interior line. The Bears will be better off than a restart. I guess, again, it's just so much money going to guys who are vets, but we don't need to keep debating that because I'm sure it's not helping the rewatchability of that, because I could just keep debating the Bears part of it for a while. Drake Maye, let's talk about him. So Drake Maye, another guy, slightly bigger guy. You can see Caleb Williams, and we do have the heights on the screen. It might be a little bit hard to see because these are small numbers, how to try to cram all the data onto one screen. But Drake Maye, 6'4", 230, so a much bigger dude than Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams measuring at 6'1" at the combine. Might not shock you to hear him come in at 6 foot, maybe even 5'11". I don't think it'd be the craziest thing in the world. He's not Kyler Murray size, but he's definitely not Drake Maye size. Drake Maye, kind of that prototypical QB in terms of the size. Same thing for Jayden Daniels as well, who's kind of built like a Greek god. These guys are like the big passers, the big kind of build guys that we've grown up watching, I think, for the most part. But Drake Maye, what he does have is a little bit of mobility. What he doesn't have, this is really inaccurate. This is like Will Levis levels of inaccurate. 61% on target rate. Last year, he was at a... Sorry for all the clicking around. I'm trying to make sure we get the right numbers in. 68% on target rate for last year. So regressing a little bit for Drake Maye there. For comparison's sake, Will Levis had a 69% on target rate. So Will Levis, not an accurate QB as we've seen this year, and he's technically better than Drake Maye is. So I would say some cause for concern when you see numbers that low for Drake Maye. Kind of Anthony Richardson adjacent accuracy, which is not what you want to see for your prototypical pocket passer that Drake Maye is supposed to be. I don't want to spoil it yet. I have to go guy by guy, but I think I'm going to push towards Jayden Daniels would be the one. But Jayden Daniels, I also think, is going to come up in the draft process. One thing that I didn't talk about up top, because I'm just hopping in here for the first time. Again, this is like an exploratory process of looking at the data and figure out like where I'm going to push my takes towards, my personal beliefs towards as we do this. I think for guys like Jayden Daniels, for guys like Drake Maye, Caleb Williams, one thing that's really different from last year's class, these guys are all a little bit old. So for Jayden Daniels, if teams don't fall in love with him, if he doesn't crush at the combine, he could fall. Michael Penix could also fall in a major way as well because of the fact that he's 24 years old. So all these guys are at least 22. I think Jayden Daniels is 23. Bo Nix is 24. Penix is 24. So these guys are all very old for a QB. Not quite Brandon Whedon old, but they are old enough that it could hurt the draft capital for some of these guys. So just something to keep in mind. Drake Maye. So another thing that stands out for him, he did not get a lot of yak. So his production was zone. So you have a big flaw on target rate being awful, but the yak is all his. So it is a skill, again, to throw guys in open space. It is also a scheme thing to throw guys in open space. So you can kind of read into that what you want. I think it is still more positive that he's able to create production without guys running after the catch. And certainly the talent for Drake Maye going to be lower, where I have to imagine his yak was higher last year with Josh Downs. No, still 5.5 last year. So never mind. Drake Maye, just a dude that's not creating yards after the catch for his guys, but that could also be the talent around him. I would say, though, that the fact that it wasn't good last year with Josh Downs, who we saw be like a really good yak guy this year, I don't think is a great reflection on Drake Maye. But again, like, at least his production is his own. He's not being, not being buoyed by guys running for 50 yards after a catch. So I guess that's a positive for Drake Maye, while also definitely being a negative at the same time. Under pressure, handles it pretty well, negative 0.37 EPA. Under 10 yards, this is another flaw. Drake Maye, I'm surprised to see how similar he looks to Anthony Richardson. And a lot of these metrics were really bad in throws of under 10 air yards. A 0.06 EPA there, a 77.8% completion rate is fine, but he's not adding value on the short throws. When you compare to Jayden Daniels, 0.3 EPA on throws of under 10 air yards. Caleb Williams, 0.2 EPA. So we're talking 3x more for Caleb Williams, 4x more for Jayden Daniels, even JJ McCarthy, 4x that. So like a lot of production is not there for Drake Maye and some of the easy stuff. He does do okay-ish in the 10 to 20 air yards range, but 48% completion rate would be lower than basically everybody in this draft class. 0.26 EPA, also basically lower than everybody who's of note in this draft class. So Drake Maye, some concerns there. You can definitely blame the offense for UNC if you want, but I think it is one thing that stands out as a flaw in his game. The good news, though, he does force the ball downfield. So we have a guy who in the past has been a willing rusher who also forced the ball downfield and is a big dude who can absorb the hits, kind of Josh Allen-sized guy. So 17% deep ball rate for him. Not the best at it. You can see here, Caleb Williams, a 1.3 EPA on throws of 20-plus air yards. You can see here, Jayden Daniels, 1.6 EPA on throws of 20-plus air yards. And you can see Drake Maye at 0.7. 0.7 is good. 0.7 is not great. So I think that with Drake Maye, whiffs of Will Levis, whiffs of Anthony Richardson, but still the draft capital is going to be there for him. So what's the landing spot for him? Who takes him at number 2? It seems like the Cardinals are now out of the game as well. It seems like they're going to bring back Kyler Murray unless they're outright lying to the media and to Kyler. So I think for Drake Maye, he is a guy that has the physicality potentially, but he needs to land somewhere it's really going to give him a chance to make the most of that, because I don't think he has the natural inclination to be good at the stuff besides just throwing the ball deep at a high rate and running at a fairly deep rate, more so last year. Really bad in the red zone as well. Red zone TD rate for Drake Maye, only 17.5%, which is another class low for him. You don't want to see this many class lows for potential number 1 or number 2 overall pick. But again, the rushing is here. Rushing is good for him. He was a more efficient rusher than he was the previous year, I believe. 0.509 EPA compared to a negative 0.22. So he got better as a rusher. He just ran it less. So that is a positive for Drake Maye, a good rusher and a willing deep ball thrower. But the short game flaws are really egregious. And I don't know that he has the raw athleticism to make it up for it like AR did. Maybe even like Will Levis does. I don't think that Drake Maye has that body composition. Let's look up hunky Drake Maye photos and see how buff he is, because that'll be an important thing to determine here. Yeah, he's like Trubisky build is what I thought. So a big dude, but definitely Drake Maye shirtless. Let's oh, here's Drake Maye. Okay, so he's lean. He's definitely not Will Levis. Definitely not Will Levis. So this one is with his partner in a bikini here. So that's one's for mathology more than anybody. Point being, though, Drake Maye, I think Will Levis skill without the Will Levis build. So still probably going to go top 3 no matter what. But I think for Drake Maye, I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling it. Look at these numbers. Better version of Mac and Zappy. Yikes. That's not the comp you want to see. Arizona beat, and team sources have been consistent on Kyler returning for months now, for what it's worth. Yeah, I mean, I've really heard, Gannon gave a quote this week in particular saying, like, yes, he's going to be our QB next year. And I haven't heard anything that's solid until this past week, but I agree that it's probably going that way. Shirtless and bikini. Now we're cooking with analytics. Look, we got to look at these guys shirtless if we can. We want to, all right, let's do the bit here. Caleb Williams. I bet Caleb Williams does not have a shirtless pick out there, because he's built like a luchador. In Mexican, like he's not Yeah, he's not that guy. What a shirt, though. Why are these guys doing this? Why the sports bra shirt? I guess there's another Caleb Williams here who's taking some shirtless pics. Caleb Williams, though, again, not a freak athlete, not a sexy guy. So let's keep that in mind. Jayden Daniels. So we all want the AR. I want the AR of this year. Jayden Daniels not as young as AR. AR, I think, was 21 when he got drafted. And now he's 22, I believe. Jayden Daniels, though, is 23 already. So on the older side, a little bit tough. Jayden Daniels, though, is a oh boy, here it is, man. Jayden Daniels is a better version of Anthony Richardson. as a prospect coming in. So here's the stuff that you'd have to downgrade him for. LSU's receivers are really good. So that's a problem for Jayden Daniels because that does mean that he could be creating value just because of the guys around him. Jayden Daniels also has been in college for a minute now. I believe one of the things I saw on Twitter was that he actually was throwing to Brandon Ayuk. And Brandon Ayuk's been in the league for what feels like fucking 10 years. So that's the thing to note with Jayden Daniels as well. That said, like these numbers are outlandish. Like these are crazy numbers. These are 0.47 EPA per target or per pass rather. Actually, let me make sure because I think this might be, let's see, divided by 3. Okay. So I think this is EPA per drop back. So no, it's EPA per pass. Sorry. Corrected myself here because I forgot what I did for last year and I just basically used the same sheet from last year. This is a crazy number for a guy who is as athletic, as big as Jayden Daniels is. These numbers are insane. So the one flaw is that, again, the yak stuff, 7.7 yards after catch. He's got really talented athletic receivers at LSU who recruits some of the best receivers in the country. So that's something you could hold him against. But an 85% catchable ball rate and a 74% on target rate. So he's substantially ahead of Drake Maye and Caleb Williams in both those categories. And he's bigger. And I don't want to spoil it here, but he ran 9.4 times per game. He ran a ton of times per game and was just as good as Anthony Richardson, if not better. 36% avoided tackle rate, higher EPA, a 0.7 EPA almost per rush. And also, again, 10.9 yards per rush. And that includes the sack yardage that he took too. So he's legitimately an elite rusher. He throws downfield a little bit less than we'd like to see, but still a 15% clip is really good. Jayden Daniels is the dude. Jayden Daniels is the fantasy #1 QB, I think, unless he goes in the second, third round behind an entrenched starter. But like these numbers, I was looking at him last night, and was like, holy fuck. Like Jayden Daniels is that guy. So the AR of the year, let's plant the flag now. It's Jayden Daniels. If he's going at 200 when the big board opens, you should be putting him in every big board draft. I would not have an issue with that. If he's even top 150 when the big board launches, I would put him in every draft. I think that he is really that guy who, if he lands anywhere where there is a path to starting, the physicality, again, just a big dude. Let's pull up Jayden Daniels. We don't even need to look him up shirtless. He's just a big dude. Oh, typo. Jayden Daniels. He looks like a bigger Bryce Young. Let's look at him shirtless. Let's see if we can. The people who are just straggling onto the stream just don't know. This can't be the same Jayden Daniels, right? My body, my terms. I hope it is. Look at this character. This is not the correct Jayden Daniels. So let's go back to regular Jayden Daniels. Big dude, honestly a little more sinewy than like bulky. So he's also not really a Will Levis type, but he kind of looks like a big Jalen Hurts, like the physicality. So I don't know. Point being, though, we can look at dudes and call him hunky if we want. But I think that for Jayden Daniels, like just the numbers here are really outlandishly good. A 1% interception rate, 0.33 EPA on throws of under 10 air yards, 0.74 EPA on throws 10 to 20, 1.6 EPA, highest in the class. He's got the highest EPAs at basically every level. So I think that for Jayden Daniels, like the main thing I would say is like, again, the landing spot's gonna be crucial, but in terms of what I'm seeing on tape here, or, on tape, on a spreadsheet here, we'll see what the film watchers say. I have to catch up with that part of things because that's later in my process. I kind of want to go in unspoiled when looking at the numbers, because that's more functional for me to develop my takes. I just think Jayden Daniels is my QB1, and I can't imagine feeling differently now that I've had this take for almost 24 hours. But he's really incredible. So sound the alarm. Spags do man crush. Spags venturing off into porn sites and love looking up big dudes to get my rocks off. Jayden Daniels will get your rocks off, guys. If he lands in anywhere that's competent, anywhere that's got an offensive coordinator that's fun, if he can fall to, no, he can't go. Carolina is not going to cut on Bryce Youngs. That's going to happen. They're probably, I think the rumors are now that Carolina is going to go after one of Miami's offensive coordinator, Frank Smith. I think that for Jayden Daniels, like that would be the ideal spot where he goes somewhere with a really progressive young offensive coordinator and has that upside. You kind of want to see Jayden Daniels be on like the Bucks with Canales, like where obviously it's not going to happen because we're going to keep Baker Mayfield. But I think that's where you want to see Jayden Daniels, like one of these guys who gets Ben Johnson. If Ben Johnson takes over, I guess the Chargers are the spot he's most linked to. But if Ben Johnson takes over a team, he drafts Jayden Daniels, I would be 100% in on Jayden Daniels. And again, I'm going to be really mindful of my exposures in best ball, but Jayden Daniels is really fucking exciting. And I think he should be the guy that you really plant that flag for now. How does Daniels' numbers compare to last year? There's some questions about his accuracy and arm this year. So last year, I think he had some flaws, which I think speaks to him growing, but still an 84% catchable ball rate, 71% on target rate, was really bad under pressure. So that he closed that gap, I think, pretty well. We went from a negative 0.95 EPA under pressure to a negative 0.5 this year. So he's improved in every facet as well, which I think is really what you do want to see, especially if you are taking an older prospect. But last year was a negative EPA guy, under 10 air yards. So nothing too crazy there. That'll happen sometimes because, again, shorter throws going to be inherently closer to minus EPAs, but still going to be positive for the most part. Yeah, he was definitely not as good last year, but at 8% deep ball rate. So he got opened up this year. So he threw an 8% deep ball rate last year, 15% this year. He also only threw 15.5% between 10 to 20 air yards last year. This year, he threw 23%. So it kind of just seems like they trusted him to actually throw the ball this year a little bit more. Last year, I know he ran more. Last year, I think he ran 13.3 times per game, a little bit less effective with it, was still really good. This year, he ran slightly less times, but was infinitely more efficient and missed more tackles, did everything. So I think he showed real improvement, at least based on the numbers. We'll see what the film tape guys and what they want to do and probably shit on him. But I think that for the pure numbers here, like he looks like CJ Stroud and Anthony Richardson rolled into one. And if that's the case, he's like one of the best fantasy QBs in football almost right away. Order the Daniels jersey now. We got to know what team he's on. I can't wear the LSU one. That's not how that goes. Daniels has some Fields type runs in the game tape. Yeah, I would like to be able to watch this game tape here on the stream, but unfortunately, like I don't want to get copyright struck and have to deal with that shit. So someday we'll maybe figure out a way to do that. But Jayden Daniels, I'm definitely gonna be watching more highlight stuff. I just don't want to spoil it with the eye test things because the numbers have to be the numbers. Is generally how I do everything process wise here. We're gonna talk about JJ McCarthy up next, who I don't know. I don't know his status for this one, but before we do that, guys, please subscribe down below. Again, like this is a really unique video. I know this is like kind of boring to look at an Excel spreadsheet while I ramble and try to extol the virtues of guys and kind of point out both sides of the equation. But this is really what the prep work looks like. I'm actually reading a video. One of the guys in the Positive Discord, Kingdom Discord recommended 442 Offsuit, I think is his name. The guy's a poker coach who's on a Discord. He recommended this book by a guy named Elliot Rowe, talking about like the mental game behind poker players and how you help them become the highest rating poker players in the world. So I'm reading that game to kind of help try to break me out of my funk. And what he's talking about there is basically for anything you do, if you really want to be great at it, if you want to be the best at it, the prep work should be treated like a professional athlete where you show up every day, you do the work. I don't want to say that I'm a professional athlete here sitting on a couch doing splash play, but that's what the work is here. We're going to do the prep, we're going to do the practice, and we're going to get ready for when the big board comes out, for when the big tournaments come out, because that's going to be our little bit of an edge we have. And this year, we had it last year. Want to make sure we have it even better this year. So join along here on Splash Play, and this is what the journey starts in January, and it goes until week 17. So this is how it goes. JJ McCarthy. Not dropping back a lot. Still a very efficient offense overall, so he's making it work. Not throwing guys into space too well, 4.8 yards after catch, but he is avoiding INTs, a 1.4% interception rate, and a 0.36 EPA is it's better than Caleb Williams, better than Drake Maye, not better than Jayden Daniels. So JJ McCarthy, I think these numbers look pretty solid for him overall. But by the way, guys, correct me in chat if these guys were officially not coming out, because I don't know for sure. It's pulled from CBS's rankings to see what that was. It's been said that spreadsheets do make some horny out there. That's true. Also, one thing to point out too, if you hit the join button down below, $4.99 a month, you obviously get my data sheet every week that I use for the NFL slates, which will be going on through the playoffs. You'll also be getting these data sheets. I'm going to link them to you guys after I finish the show. So if you want to jump in for yourself, I'll give you guys my QB college data for 2024 and 2023. And you can look at it. And of course, again, shout out to Sports Info Solutions. Again, if you want to pay for that, a great product if you want to get more details. But I tried to put everything that was important for the college guys into these sheets. So JJ McCarthy, I think really good. I mean, like, I think that he and Jayden Daniels, in terms of guys that are creating value for an offense, they do stand out in a tier above their own. Of course, Jayden Daniels' team, not as good as JJ McCarthy's. McCarthy, of course, we're going to see the national title game next week. But McCarthy definitely looks like a solid player across every level. 6'3" height, 202 pounds, like then good size as well. The rushing is definitely not there as much, only 3 runs per game. Did miss tackles, though, so maybe a Joe Burrow-esque rusher is what we say for guys that are better pocket passers, but maybe have the ability to rush and create some value. CJ Stroud fit that criteria last year. We've seen it come into play this year as well, where CJ Stroud is he's not AR. He's not even Bryce Young in terms of the running that Bryce Young's kind of been forced into as a result of that offense being so bad. But just the ability to run is sort of an important thing here because you don't want a pure statue QB, I think, in the modern NFL, and definitely not for fantasy. 10.9 here, yards per rush. JJ McCarthy, 9.4 rushes per game. Again, accounting for sacks and all of that. That's Jayden Daniels, sorry. 3 rushes per game, 7.5. I'm reading the chat at the same time out of my peripheral, so that's my bad. I'm impressed by McCarthy. I think he kind of screams system QB more. Only a 13% deep ball rate, good for a 0.6 EPA. So we're getting closer to Drake Maye territory with less of a natural disposition to throwing it deep because Drake Maye's rate was higher. McCarthy, though, I don't really see anything that I would say is a major flaw. I would question if it's the offense. I know Blake Corum was a guy as well in Michigan that last year, looking at his running back numbers, I've not looked at running back and wide receiver and tight end for this year yet. But Corum was a guy that did really well in that offense last year, so I kind of think it might be a sign because Corum is not a dude I expect. I don't know. I guess we'll see. He's small, but he is a good runner, so maybe he does get a little more draft capital than you'd expect. But I think that McCarthy, I would err on the side of thinking this is more the offense creating value. But if he has a sick combine, if he has some good reports about him, if he has things looking on the upswing, I think McCarthy is a good player to look at here based on these metrics. What is his age, though? 20 years old. So he might not even come out, I would guess. If he does come out, being 20, so being 2 years younger than these guys, I think McCarthy, if he came out, would be a really solid pick. So I'm not sure if that'll be the case. I would assume at his age, if Harbaugh's coming back, I would think that McCarthy comes back. And maybe if Harbaugh doesn't come back, McCarthy gets the transfer portal. I'm not sure how that would go. But everything looks good for him. Like, he's a solid player, 0.9 EPA, 10 to 20 air yards. Like, he's not the deep ball guy. Like, I think he's not a pure gunslinger, but adding value at every level, being a positive rusher, even though he's not running a lot. And then also a little bit protected with the 23.5 dropbacks per game. But I think still for McCarthy, like, he looks really solid, and being 20 years old in this class, like, actually could make him a first round pick if he were to come out. So just something to keep in mind. Sorry, Riley Leonard's going to Notre Dame, not the draft. I think Will Howard is also going to be transferring, but I know he visited USC and maybe FSU, but Will Howard is still technically live to be drafted. So we'll take out Riley Leonard just to make this easier. There we go. Bye-bye, Riley. Bye-bye, Riley. Rumors that Shedeur broke his back, missed the last game of the season, and he's likely to turn to Colorado next year. I would hope so because he does not grade out that well for me. Shedeur Sanders, 0.012 EPA is legit not good per pass. 0.94 or negative 0.94 EPA when getting pressured, along with 11% sack rate, 35% pressure rate. You can't blame him for the pressure rate necessarily. You can blame him a little bit for the sack rate. That's not good. His EPA metrics overall, 0.2 EPA and throws of under 10 air yards are fine. He's not hitting the middle part of the field too well, only a 17% rate of throws 10 to 20 air yards. So that's not that great. The deep throw rate under 10% of the time, not great. Not a great tendency there either. And as a runner, he's worse than all the other guys we talked about. So Shedeur is one of those guys, and I know people enjoyed the Colorado thing earlier in the year. I just don't think they were ever that good. And maybe more power to him with Deion making the move from the historically black colleges to bringing a lot of his guys over to Colorado. Like, that worked out. I just don't think Shedeur is anything more than like a name brand kind of thing. And nothing here that I'm seeing makes me feel like he should be more than that. The catchable ball rate's okay, 82%, but he's not really creating value with it. The yak is low. And again, if you're not good and the yak is low, it's not a good thing. If you're good and the yak is low, like, that can be interpreted as a good thing. For Shedeur, though, like, just nothing here stands out meaningfully. And to me, like, if you had a different name on him, I just don't think people would be that excited, but that's me. USC, Miami, and Ohio State for Howard. There we go. I know Justin, is looking at all the stuff pretty regularly because I remember last year that Justin was correcting me on a lot of things that I did not know from not being that deeply in it. Quinn Ewers. So another guy here, and obviously a good run for Texas this year. We'll see. Obviously, I would imagine he's got to come out, right? Because they have to go to the Arch Manning way at some point. But Ewers here, again, solid completion rate, solid catchable ball rate, solid on target rate, 72%. Like they return to Texas. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I would think that they need to have Arch Manning in there just for the NIL stuff and the fact that he's probably going to make them a lot of money. But well, I don't know. Let's see. So Ewers here, metrics look good. 83% catchable ball rate, 72% on target rate, 0.24 EPA. So again, looking solid here. What's Ewers' age? Let's see this. Ewers is 20. Oh man, look at this one. Dude, look at this photo. That's a man who looks like a linebacker more than a QB. Now here looks like a little boy. What a variety of photos. All right, well, there's Quinn Ewers for you. I don't think we need to search him shirtless because, frankly, I don't need to see it. Now, Drake Maye and Jayden Daniels, I needed to know. I needed to see them titties out for Quinn Ewers, not so much. Negative 0.45 EPA under pressure, that's fine. 0.24 EPA throws under 10 air yards, that's also fine. 0.7 EPA in the middle range of the field, 10 to 20 air yards, that's fine. Not a deep ball thrower, though. We do not want to see that. When you go into the pros, you want to see guys coming in more aggressive and see them get reined in by the coach, but you want to have that natural tendency to get the ball downfield because that's just like Joe Flacco, what we've seen with him in the Browns. Like when you have that ability to force the ball downfield over and over again, it just creates value, even if you're not the best QB in the world. So for him to be as low as Shedeur, I think is not a great sign. Bo Nix is going to have a similar ding, but at least he runs a good offense. We'll talk about him in a moment. Ewers doesn't run, had some success when running for touchdowns, but again, at best, a Joe Burrow level runner, nothing too crazy there. Ewers seems like a fine play. I'm not there's nothing about Ewers that scares me off like Shedeur. A little bit of systeminess to it, 7.8 yards after the catch with some of the iffy overall, or at least average overall metrics. But I think for Ewers, he's okay. If he were to come out at 20, I think that would be, again, another young guy. I wouldn't hate it. I personally feel like Caleb and Jayden Daniels are more elite prospects and Drake Maye with the size, I think it's going to be a little bit better. But Ewers still, if he does clock in at 6'2", I could see getting there. Again, another guy, if he comes out being young, I think is an advantage for him. Bo Nix, 24. Bo Nix is 24 years old, so that's not a great sign. But again, he at Auburn, I think, had some positives. At Oregon, though, he looks like a legit offense runner. I don't know where he'll get drafted because of that age and because, again, just being 24 is a really tough thing to dig out of. For Bo Nix, though, 88% catchable ball rate, 77% on target rate, low intended air yards per attempt, which has been the case for Shedeur, Quinn Ewers, and Bo Nix. So that's what differentiates a Drake Maye, a Jayden Daniels, even a JJ McCarthy, is that these guys are getting the ball downfield. Drake Maye, for whatever his flaws may be, he's putting it past the sticks every time he's throwing it. Jayden Daniels pretty close to that. JJ McCarthy close to that. Ewers, Bo Nix, more of kind of a check down. For Bo Nix, though, he was running a really good offense and a timing offense. So I think Bo Nix is the kind of guy that, obviously, the comp that you're going to hear over and over again, as long as Brock Purdy is in the league and doing well, is like a Brock Purdy. When you have a guy that comes in with a college offense that has some pro, ability to it. Bo Nix, I don't know his offense is quite as pro style, but still, it's a functional, professionally run offense. He's running that offense to keep things running on time. So I think for Bo Nix, that's a good sign. And I really like Bo Nix's numbers last year as well. I don't think he's actually. Oh, here's some of his stuff. Let's see. Bo Nix last year, 72% completion rate, 82% catchable ball rate, 73% on target. Again, low throw there, low intended air yards per attempt. Also not a big deep ball thrower last year, 10% deep ball rate. But Bo Nix is just efficient and creates value at every level in terms of the EPA metrics. They did it for now 2 straight years. So I think Bo Nix is a guy where if he lands on a good offense, I'd feel really good about that one. So Bo Nix, and also this is crazy too. A positive EPA under pressure for Bo Nix. So able to read blitzers, able to really see when guys are coming at you and create positive plays out of that is a very rare skill. And we talked about it throughout the year, of course, the Spags rankings videos in particular, where, there are flaws for guys where Jordan Love at the beginning of the year was like a -1 EPA player, like a flat, giving away a point every time he's getting pressured. Then as the year went on, that EPA number got a little bit softer. And he's now, I think, like a -0.4 EPA per drop back guy against pressure. So for a guy like Bo Nix to be able to be a positive EPA guy under pressure already and then be coming into the pros, I think he's the kind of guy you could put into an offense and have some confidence in right away. And you kind of have to, given his age. So for Bo Nix, I like it a lot. 0.29 EPA under 10 air yards. I keep fucking moving around here. Sorry. 0.92 EPA, 10 to 20 air yards. And again, the deep ball stuff is a flaw, but if you run a good offense, you don't have to get the ball downfield. I think he has the arm to do it. I think it could be more of a trust thing. But again, the natural tendency is the main thing we look for. So just something to keep in mind. Bo Nix, definitely not a runner. Still a positive EPA runner, though, so he's fine. Not a thing that's going to add value, but I think the biggest value for him is just getting into an offense that can run well. Like, that's really it. Bo Nix, the age, the concern, the size, we'll see how he measures in. 6'2", 217 is what they're reporting as of right now. But for Bo Nix, like, I like his numbers a lot. I think he would be another dark horse for me. We don't know if McCarthy's going to be in. If I were to rank guys based on what we looked at so far, we're going to get to Michael Penix next. I'm sure it's going to be an exciting one for a lot of people out there. I think I would rank these guys for my personal preference for fantasy. Jayden Daniels, number 1. Caleb Williams, number 2. JJ McCarthy. I think it's still Drake Maye, number 3, because we know the draft capital is going to be there. McCarthy, 4. Bo Nix, 5. I think is where I would have Bo Nix right now. But I like what Bo Nix could do. I think he can run an offense. That's all I can ask for any of these QBs. Put in the baby's bank. Much love. Shout out Sammy. Appreciate the super chat here. It will be going right back to my pockets. my pockets that desperately need lining here, but I appreciate that, Sammy. Of course, appreciate all you guys here who do contribute super chats. And of course, if you're a member, another great way to help keep the show going every single day. A lot of olds at QB. That is true. Doing this in January for the love of the game. Let's fucking go. It's for the love of the game, but I think it's a part of what the prep process should look like. So if you want to, this is what we always promise on Splash Play. Like, I think that's why we had a lot of winners in the community. It was like, we did the process every day. It doesn't always work out, especially in best ball, but if you do the process, you'll hopefully get some results. Michael Penix, exciting lefty. So a lefty player. Michael Irvin said, I think he reminded him of Michael Vick, even though Michael Penix runs, I think, like 2 times a game and has the knees of your grandfather. So that's not where Michael Penix should be. Michael Penix has the size, very live arm. I will say I know a little bit more about Michael Penix just from watching some games, because Washington playing in the Pac-12 and frankly being the best possible outcome of what USC could have been this year has made me watch him a little bit more. I think there are some real flaws with Penix. I think he's old. I think there's going to be some injury prone stuff. And I think as well that, like, for a gunslinger, 66% on target rate is not good. Like, that's not good for a vet at 24. He should be better than this. Like, he just should be better than it. That said, he does get the ball downfield, 10 to 10 at air yards per attempt. Not a lot of yak, so he is getting the production from his own arm, not from other guys running from him. Again, a positive thing. 0.25 EPA per pass, still a good metric, but not crazy. Not crazy great, rather. Again, we have Jayden Daniels at 0.47, McCarthy 0.36, Bo Nix at 0.41, so Penix is fine. But for a guy who gets the ball downfield, who is an aggressive deep ball thrower, as we're going to see, I would expect him to be better downfield, and he's not. So I think that's not a great sign for Penix. 0.23 EPA on throws of under 10 air yards. That's not doing a whole lot for me. 0.5 EPA, 10 to 20 air yards, also not doing a lot for me. He is a willing deep ball thrower at a 19% rate, but only a 0.5 EPA, given the fact that he does have talent around him. Like, Odunze is going to be a guy that gets drafted in the first round. And that's not, I don't know, man. I think Penix, to me, you love the highlights. You love seeing clips pop up on social media. There's nothing about Penix here that jumps out in a meaningful way. I don't think that would preclude him from being a good QB. Would you combine him being old with the fact that, like, it's just the numbers don't match up with what you see? And I think that's a really bad sign, because you see the highlights and you're like, man, this guy's a world beater. He should have Jayden Daniels numbers. Like, he should have at least like a 1 EPA, a 1.6 EPA. He should be getting the ball downfield and having success with it. And he's not. And if he's not doing that, I don't know what his real value is. So I guess that's going to be the hot take here, is like, I just don't think Penix is that guy. I think the age, the injuries, all of that, not the move. We'll see. Again, he'll probably have a great game, maybe win the national championship. But I think that's the ceiling. I don't know. I think that's the ceiling. Spags is a QB guru / neuro massage artist. I'll take that. I mean, I don't really know what neuro massage is. I feel like I've seen that pop up in some of the adult film searches I've come across in my day, but I don't know. I accept it though. I appreciate that from our guy Raleigh, of course, 2-time BBM finalist this year, Raleigh Durham. Your wide receivers are loaded. The Chiefs would die for the UW starting wide receivers. Okay, so yeah, I think Penix, to me, nothing here makes me feel like it's a great pick. And I think people are going to talk themselves into it. I think fantasy people especially are going to be like, Michael Penix, watch out. And then he's going to go in like the 4th, 5th round to a team that's like, he'd be an obvious QB2. I think Penix, I'd rather have Hendon Hooker from last year. Like, I think that he's a better player than Penix. And Hendon Hooker, we'll see. Maybe he ends up somehow with that Detroit starting job if Jared Goff and the Lions can't come to terms, or if that playoff run flames out for them. But Penix, to me, I don't see it. Tyler Van Dyke, I think we're now towards the part of the draft, or the potential draft, where it's not very useful. Tyler Van Dyke, a dude that is not really worth anything, I don't think. 6'4" size for him. Last year was also not good. Tyler Van Dyke, to me, probably one of those guys that falls off. Equivalent last year would be Tanner McKee. Tanner McKee was a guy that popped up a lot in the early NFL draft boards because he was 6'5". He ended up going, I think, in the 5th round as a backup QB to the Eagles, and I think don't even ended up on the depth chart for the year. So for like Tyler Van Dyke, I don't know why he's on this list. He doesn't seem like a dude that should matter too much. Let's see. Joe Milton. Joe Milton's a guy that I really wanted to like because he did have some nice 2023 numbers, small sample size stuff, but did have 16 intended air yards per attempt in Tennessee's video game offense. So obviously you kind of have to downgrade a little bit there. 18.3 yards per catch, 11.8 yards per attempt, 5.5 yards after catch. So all the production was coming from him, 0.503 EPA. But of course it was an 11.3 drop back per game, a small sample size thing. So now we see a little bit more from Joe Milton this year, and he's just not there. He's not as good as Hendon Hooker was in this offense, only a 0.04 EPA. The deep ball rate also coming down to 15% deep ball rate. He also ran not a lot this year, which I would think Milton, based on what I know of him, is like an athletic prospect. Didn't run very much, didn't create a lot of value with it. So Milton, a guy that, I don't know, like maybe if he has a sick combine, maybe comes up enough to be able to do that. But I think for Joe Milton, just a guy that doesn't really grade out as well as I would have liked to have seen. Again, I know he's got crazy arm talent. I've heard the stuff about like he could throw the ball 100 yards or whatever at Tennessee. He's not doing it. He's not doing it in games. So for Joe Milton, wish it were better. It's not. I dare you besmirch a Tyler like that. Yes, I'm sorry for Tyler Van Dyke. Two of our Tyler's favorite things, Tyler and Dykes. I saw chatter after the last game that Penix could have played his way into the first round. I was surprised seeing that. I just don't see it. I don't know. I mean, maybe in like a Brandon Whedon way, like he's an older player. He's having a good run in the playoff. Just the numbers don't bear it out. And again, maybe he'll go nuts if he throws for 400 yards in the college football playoff final. Maybe people go there. I don't know. I don't see it on paper. Cam Ward, another guy declared with the shortest declaration video in the history of declaration videos, saying, "I'm Cam Ward. I'm going to the NFL draft." That was it. So he's really playing to the TikTok mindset that we all have to as content creators these days. Drop back 44 times per game, 79% catchable ball rate, 71% on target rate. That's fine. 0.027 EPA, not doing a whole lot for you, but playing at Washington State, playing at Wazoo, not going to do a whole lot for you in terms of the receiver talent there, unless Justin wants to correct me in the chat. Pressure, negative 0.75 EPA. That's not good. Short throws, 0.13 EPA. That's not good when you also don't throw the deep ball at a high rate. 10% deep ball rate, not a lot of success on it with a 0.4 EPA there. Negative 0.4 EPA in the red zone, which again, we don't want to penalize guys for, but if you have a negative EPA in the red zone, you just kind of aren't able to create in short spaces. So Cam Ward not doing that. A somewhat willing rusher, 6.6 rushes per game. Not a lot of success with it, not a lot of avoided tackles. Cam Ward's a guy that I'm sure gets drafted, but I feel like that's like a Jaron Hall level prospect if you're going to draft a Cam Ward. These other guys here, I know Cam Rising is one. He played this year, didn't he? Why doesn't he have stats? Is it in his Cam now? No, I guess we just don't have Cam Rising stats for this year. Cam Rising was a guy that's beaten up on USC a lot, so I've always had a soft spot for, but he's another guy who's, I think, 25 now with a lot of knee injuries in the past. So Cam Rising, not a guy. Will Howard, I think, needs to go back to college because nothing here looks that great from him. I think we've covered the main QBs. So takeaways here. I think for what we're seeing so far, and of course, we're going to talk more about this. We're going to do running backs, we're going to do wide receivers, we're going to do tight ends, and we'll revisit them all at the end before the big board launches and try to land on where we think these guys should be going relative to where they're going to go in that big board. All right, so takeaways for me, and I'll go big screen for this. Jayden Daniels. Jayden fucking Daniels is the guy. Jayden Daniels, if he goes in that first round, I don't give a fuck, man. Jayden Daniels, if he goes to a good coach, like we're not going to have the A.R. Steichen thing that we're done so well last year. I think for Jayden Daniels, maybe though, maybe it's possible that somehow there's some configuration out there. I don't know. But Jayden Daniels is fantasy QB1, I think. And he's not going to be drafted like it. I think the big board, he's going to be drafted really lowly again to start. He shouldn't be. He's an elite prospect. I've not seen numbers like this in my 2 years of reviewing it here. But also I did go back through a lot of numbers when I was doing some Football Outsiders articles, in particular the one Anthony Richardson comparing him to previous QBs. These numbers for Jayden Daniels would be better than Jalen Hurts, would be better than Josh Allen, would be better than Justin Fields. He is that dude. He is 100% that dude. So we wanted the AR. Do I still have the jersey here? I do. Anthony Richardson, get out of here. It's Jayden Daniels season. We're a Jayden Daniels household. Spags is 50% of Jayden Daniels BBM. No, I'm capping myself at 20% and everything at max. That's inaccurate. I do not want his meat. I want his fantasy points. So yeah, Jayden Daniels is it. Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, fine prospects. A little bit less impressed with Drake Maye than I would have thought. Caleb Williams, I think, the eye test, the human part of it. I know a lot of people on social media with the black nail polish and him crying with his mom in the stands. People hate Caleb Williams. I don't think he deserves that level of hate. That said, compare this year to last year, there is a drop-off. So if you really want to nickel and dime Caleb Williams, you can. I think you kind of have to give him a little bit of grace because this was a really high-pressure year coming off the Heisman campaign, also coming off of basically being treated like a pro athlete, doing commercials and shit. I just don't think that's where you want your QB to be in college necessarily, but that's obviously going to be something the whole world has to adjust to moving forward. But Caleb Williams, I think, still very live, probably still going to be the number 1 overall pick, unless Jayden Daniels is like a crusher at the combine and the AR thing is fresh in people's minds, and then Jayden Daniels somehow comes up. But being 23, I think is a ding for Jayden Daniels. It'd be hard for him to make that leap. Don't be shocked. I would not hate right now. I don't think there are prop markets out for it. Jayden Daniels top 10, I'd take that bet. I think is worth it. I don't think he can pass Drake Maye, but I think he can go top 10. Drake Maye, I wish he were better too. But a willing deep ball thrower, was a willing rusher before he was in this year, before going to the NFL draft. So Drake Maye, I think, is in play. Those are probably your 1, 2, 3 in terms of fantasy QBs. I think Jayden Daniels is my fantasy 1, Caleb Williams fantasy 2, Drake Maye fantasy 3. JJ McCarthy, Quinn Ewers, watch if they come out. McCarthy, a lot better prospect than Ewers is. I do think both come back because of the age and the fact they both are part of programs that are on the upswing still. But we'll see. Obviously, Harbaugh leaving for Michigan would be a thing that definitely changed the equation for McCarthy, I'm sure. And Bo Nix, I think if we're going to talk about guys that are going to go a little bit later but have actual value and are a little bit too old, I'd rather have Bo Nix than Michael Penix. I think that Penix being a willing deep ball thrower is a great thing. In the pros, though, I just think he's going to have a harder time getting that ball where it has to go. He's not a great on-target thrower. He's not doing a lot of things that add value that you can control at the pro level. And as Justin pointed out, a lot of great talent around him in college. So he's going to have better talent in the NFL, you would think, unless he were playing in a Bryce Youngs situation. So for Penix, I just think that he's not living up to what the eye sees watching the tape. So that's where we are with Penix. But I if nothing else, I hope this does give you some joy to look forward to with Jayden Williams, because that's, like, I'm telling you, man, I look at those numbers, you see that much green on the sheet across everywhere, and to run as much as he does too, and also be creating value, that's like me and the spooky ghost meme from South Park. I'm covered in semen right now because of how good Jayden Williams looks. So that's the takeaway from the QB stuff. Of course, we'll be doing more here. I'm not sure if I'm going to be doing playoff basketball tomorrow because there's not a mitten out right now. And frankly, again, don't want to jam $125 of entries here getting sniped on stream. But we'll be doing something tomorrow, I believe. So come back for that one. Of course, Friday, still doing week 18, of course, talking about the preview and, of course, doing the usual sim/hand-built lineup process here. But of course, join Splash Play, hit that subscribe button down below, or join the channel, $4.99 a month, and you will get access to these data sheets that I just dropped as well if you want to see more about it. If you also want to ask me any questions about what you're looking at on the sheet, you can do that as well, but we'll be dropping that in the community tab for our paying members here right after the show ends. Follow me at Chris Spags. Follow the show at Splash Play Pod. Shouts to the Squirt Squad. A new, bigger list of Squirt Squad. I had to lower the font, move things around, but here are all the folks that are helping us put on the show right now. Thanks to all the members, of course. Would love to get to 100 members, 1,000 members. 1,000 members would be really sick. So please hit that join button down below, $4.99 a month to get all the data. Also, Probably, check it out, probably.com/subscribe. Save 50%. Promo code SPLASH to get you that 50% off. Under $10 a month for all the winning data. And I even put a parlay in yesterday because I was like, I don't trust these NBA bets. I didn't feel great about the NBA bets. A lot of unders on the Celtics, which actually did end up losing. Plays the college basketball bet, 4-leg bet, ended up making back all my money and then some. So the Probably data is working, man. I don't know how much more to sell it to you guys that aren't in legal betting state but haven't tried it out yet. But I put my life into this thing. I've put more than my entire savings into this product. So it works really well. Check it out for yourself, probably.com. And of course, what we do there is track the winningest sportsbooks around the world to find the true probabilities of every bet. Use that data to find the best bets every day, and it works. It just fucking works, and it's a lot better than props.cash and outlier and all that bullshit. So if you're betting, please, probably.com/subscribe. Save 50% with promo code SPLASH. Back tomorrow with more. We'll see you guys then. Thank you for watching. Stick with me in the spreadsheet video. I'll see you guys soon. Enjoy your days. Good luck. Bye.